Rise, my apprentice.
Hey, what's up guys? So in Revenge of the Sith, Anakin cuts off Mace Windu's hand to prevent him from killing Palpatine. Anakin is conflicted, but ultimately is driven by his desperation to save Padme, because he believes Palpatine holds the knowledge to save her. This act solidifies his turn to the dark side, aligning himself with Palpatine and the Sith. However, in today's story, I want to look at what if Anakin blocks Mace's saber instead of cutting off his hand. Mace Windu looked at Anakin with anger. Deep in his heart, he always knew that Anakin would choose the Chancellor over the Jedi. In the saber lock, Mace used the Force to send Anakin back, creating space. Mace focused his attention on Anakin. Meanwhile, Palpatine let out a smile as he rose to his feet. He could intervene, but he wanted to see his new apprentice in action. Mace Windu scolded Anakin for defending the Sith. Anakin retorted by saying this wasn't the Jedi way. The two engaged in a duel, each warrior drawing upon their unique lightsaber forms. Anakin utilized Form 5, also known as Gem So, a style that focused on powerful, aggressive attacks and a strong defense. This form allowed him to leverage his physical strength, counterattacking with overwhelming force to break his opponent's defense. Mace Windu, on the other hand, wielded Form 7, known as Vapod. This form was highly aggressive and unpredictable, channeling both his inner darkness and his opponent's dark side energy to fuel his attacks. Vapod required intense focus and was only mastered by him because it was so dangerous. As they clashed, Anakin's raw power and aggression met Mace's refined and unpredictable style. Despite Anakin's strength, Mace had a unique advantage, his ability to absorb and redirect darkside energy, which he had used against Sidious. However, Anakin was not yet fully committed to the dark side, making this power almost irrelevant. Mace Windu and Anakin Skywalker clashed fiercely, their lightsabers a blur of motion and light. Each blow from Anakin was met with a precise parry from Mace, their different styles creating a dazzling display of skill and power.
Why, Anakin? Why do you need him?
To save Padme from death.
The words hung in the air, and Mace's eyes widened as the realization dawned. He understood now why Anakin had acted so irrationally, not just in this moment, but throughout the Clone Wars.
Anakin, such power does not exist. The Jedi have collected nearly all the Sith holocrons and scrolls. If such power existed, surely Master Yoda would have discovered it by now.
You don't understand. The chance that Palpatine knows something the Jedi don't, I have to take it.
Their lightsabers clashed again, a shower of sparks illuminating their determined faces. Mace pressed on.
Think, Anakin. If Palpatine knew this power, he would no longer need an apprentice. He would be all-powerful, able to rule forever. Why would he share such power with you?
Anakin faltered for a moment, Mace's words sinking in. He began to internalize the thought. Mace was right. If Palpatine had this power, why would he need anyone else? As they entered another saber lock, Mace could sense the shift in Anakin's heart. His words had reached him. Both warriors began to lower their guards slightly, a silent understanding forming between them. But Palpatine, sensing the change, acted swiftly. From behind, he lunged forward, his crimson lightsaber igniting with a hiss. He drove the blade into Mace's chest, the Jedi Master gasping in pain and surprise. Mace collapsed to the ground, his lightsaber extinguishing as he fell.
Anakin, finish him.
Anakin hesitated, his lightsaber wavering. Palpatine seized the moment, his voice a poisonous whisper.
The Jedi have always held you back. They fear your power, but I have always wanted to see you reach your full potential.
No, I won't join you.
Anakin redirected his fight towards Palpatine, their sabers clashing with a ferocity that shook the room. Palpatine had the upper hand initially, his skills honed by decades of dark side mastery. Anakin was a formidable warrior, but he was not yet on Palpatine's level. As the fight wore on, Anakin thought about all the times Sidious had manipulated him. If Sidious was the CIS leader, then he had orchestrated the attempts on Padme's life. Rage and betrayal surged within him, fueling his resolve. Drawing on his emotions, Anakin Anakin's power grew exponentially, just as it had during his duel with Dooku. Palpatine began to realize the danger. He had always known Anakin had the potential to be stronger than him, but he had not foreseen his powers growing so quickly. Anakin's strikes became more precise, more powerful, each one driving Palpatine back. With the final powerful blow, Anakin disarmed Palpatine, his red lightsaber clattering to the floor. Anakin stood over him, breathing heavily, his eyes blazing with a mix of fury and determination. Palpatine looked up, fear flickering in his eyes for the first time.
You manipulated me. You tried to kill Padme. You will not harm anyone else.
With a swift motion, Anakin brought his lightsaber down, cutting Palpatine's life. The Sith Lord let out a final strangled gasp before falling silently. Anakin deactivated his lightsaber, looking down at the fallen bodies of Mace Windu and Palpatine, the weight of his actions settling upon him. Soon after, Anakin was arrested for the murder of Chancellor Palpatine. Mace Windu attempted to stage a coup against the Jedi for overthrowing the Republic. However, Ahsoka Tano intervened, bringing in Maul, who had crucial information. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Utapau gathered intelligence about the remaining Separatist leaders' location on Mustafar. These leaders were seized and brought in alongside Maul. With the evidence presented, it became clear that Palpatine was indeed the mastermind behind the war. Hollow recordings, testimonies from the captured Separatist leaders, and Maul's revelations painted a vivid picture of Palpatine's manipulation and deceit. The Senate, initially in turmoil, began to understand the true scope of Palpatine's machinations. Anakin, initially viewed as a traitor, was recognized as the one who has saved everyone from Palpatine's tyranny. The Jedi Order, though tarnished by the events, stood vindicated. The Republic began the process of rebuilding with a renewed sense of purpose and unity. Anakin, burdened by his actions, but relieved by the truth coming to light, vowed to help restore peace and balance to the galaxy. The galaxy began to heal from the wounds inflicted by the war, and amid this recovery, Padme Amidala gave birth to twins, Luke and Leia Skywalker. Anakin, having been cleared of all charges, was overjoyed and determined to raise his children in a safer, more just galaxy. The Jedi Order, now more attuned to the balance of the Force, welcomed the children into the Jedi Temple with open arms. In the Jedi Temple, Luke and Leia grew up surrounded by wisdom and guidance. Their father, Anakin Skywalker, played a central role in their upbringing, ensuring they received the best training the Order could offer. Anakin, drawing from his own experiences, emphasized the importance of understanding both the light and dark sides of the Force. He taught them to harness their emotions constructively, blending compassion with strength. The temple's grand halls became the twins' playground, their laughter echoing through the ancient corridors. Under the watchful eyes of Jedi Masters such as Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi, Luke and Leia thrived. Their training including lightsaber combat, meditation, and the study of the Force's mysteries. Anakin often sparred with them, teaching them Form 5, Gem So, emphasizing its balance of defense and powerful counterattacks. Leia displayed a natural talent for diplomacy and strategy, often found in the temple's library, studying the history of the galaxy and the Jedi. She was compassionate and strong-willed, her determination to bring peace reminiscent of her mother's. Luke, on the other hand, was more impulsive and adventurous, his affinity for mechanics and piloting inherited from Anakin. Despite their differences, the twins shared a deep bond, their strengths complementing each other perfectly. After his capture, Maul was taken to the Prism, a highly secure detention facility designed to contain the most dangerous and powerful criminals in the galaxy. The Prism, an immense fortified space station, orbited a remote and desolate planet, making escape virtually impossible. Its intricate security system, advanced technology, and constant surveillance ensured that no one left without the Republic's permission. Maul, stripped of his weapons and shackled in energy restraints, was placed in a heavily guarded cell. The facility's cold, sterile environment was a stark contrast to the chaos and violence that had defined his life. But Maul was not one to be subdued easily. He bided his time, observing the patterns of the guards, the routines of the facility, and the behaviors of his fellow inmates. The inmates of the Prism included some of the galaxy's most notorious and ruthless individuals. Maul, with his cunning and ruthlessness, began to slowly manipulate them to his will. He used his natural charisma and deep understanding of the dark side to sow seeds of discontent and foster alliances. Through whispered conversations and subtle gestures, Maul identified those who were susceptible to his influence and began to weave a web of loyalty around himself. Maul's influence grew steadily as he played on the inmates' desire for power, freedom, and revenge. He positioned himself as their leader, promising them a future future where they could reclaim their power and strike back at their enemies. Maul's time in the Prism was marked by careful planning and manipulation. He orchestrated minor disturbances, testing the facility's security and resolve of the guards. These disruptions served to solidify his control over the inmates, demonstrating his ability to challenge the authority of their captors and instill a sense of hope and rebellion among his followers. Maul, ever the master strategist, spent months meticulously planning his escape from the Prism. He leveraged his growing influence over the inmates, recruiting those who possessed unique skills essential for his plan. Each follower was given a specific task, unknowingly contributing to a scheme that would ultimately only serve Maul's escape. The plan hinged on precision and coordination. Maul and his followers carefully mapped out the facility, identifying weak points in the security and the locations of critical systems. Using his followers' technical expertise, Maul orchestrated a series of distractions to divert the guards' attention. Sabotage systems and false alarms became the norm, gradually desensitizing the guards to the disturbances. On the chosen day, the plan was set into motion. Maul's followers initiated a staged riot in the prison's lower levels, drawing the bulk of the guards away from their post. Meanwhile, a select group of inmates under Maul's direct command infiltrated the station's control center. They overpowered the guards and accessed the self-destruct system, planting explosive devices in key areas of the station. Maul made his way to a concealed escape pod, leaving his followers to carry out the final steps of the plan. As the countdown to the station's destruction began, Maul's followers realized the true nature of his betrayal. The explosions rocked the Prism, tearing through its infrastructure and causing a catastrophic chain reaction. The facility, once thought impregnable, was now a scene of chaos and devastation. As the station began to implode, Maul's escape pod jettisoned from the wreckage, speeding away into the void of space. The massive explosion obliterated the station, killing everyone inside, including the followers who had unknowingly facilitated Maul's escape. The blast wiped out all evidence of his presence and activities within the Prism, leaving nothing but a field of debris. The Jedi, aware of the explosion, dispatched a team to investigate the remains of the Prism. The destruction was so complete that it was impossible to determine if anyone had escaped. With no survivors or witnesses, the Jedi were left with more questions than answers. After his dramatic escape from the prison, Maul retreated to the Outer Rim, a region of the galaxy known for its lawlessness and seclusion. Here he began rebuilding his power base, operating in the shadows to avoid detection by the Jedi and Republic. He re-established contact with remnants of his former criminal empire and began to consolidate power, leading the Shadow Collective once more. Maul's identity remained a closely guarded secret, even from his closest allies. He adopted various aliases and masks to conceal his true nature, ensuring that his enemies remained unaware of his resurgence. His knowledge of the dark side and his strategic brilliance allowed him to maneuver the Shadow Collective into a position of dominance in the Outer Rim. Under his leadership, the Shadow Collective expanded its influences, taking control of various criminal enterprises, including spice trafficking, smuggling, and mercenary work. During this time, Maul took on an apprentice, Darth Talon. Talon was a fierce and skilled Twilight warrior, deeply attuned to the dark side. Maul trained her in the ways of the Sith, passing on his knowledge of lightsaber combat, force manipulation, and philosophies of the dark side. Talon became a formidable Sith in her own right, fiercely loyal to Maul and instrumental in executing his plans. The Shadow Collective power grew exponentially when they discovered lost hyperspace paths used by the Nile during the High Republic. These secret routes allowed Maul and his forces to move throughout the galaxy quickly and unexpectedly, giving them a significant tactical advantage. Initially, they used these paths to conduct hit-and-run attacks on rival factions and Republic forces, striking swiftly and disappearing without a trace. However, as Maul's ambitions grew, so did the scale of his operations. The Shadow Collective began to take over entire systems, establishing a network of strongholds and bases. Maul's criminal empire evolved into a formidable force that the galaxy could no longer ignore. Their operations became more organized and sophisticated, extending their reach into the core worlds and beyond. The galaxy, still reeling from the devastation of the Clone Wars, could not afford another large-scale conflict. The Jedi Order, recognizing the growing threat of the Shadow Collective, began to investigate independently from the Republic. Anakin's children, now young adults, spearhead this investigation. Luke and Leia Skywalker, trained in the ways of the Jedi, were determined to uncover the truth behind this rising darkness. As they gathered more information, Luke and Leia reported their findings to their father. Anakin, now Yoda's right-hand man on the Jedi Council, saw the pieces falling into place. Though there was no concrete evidence, his instinct instincts and the Force told him that Maul was behind the Shadow Collective's rise. Anakin's suspicions grew stronger with each report from his children. One fateful day, Leia was captured by Maul's criminals during one of her investigative missions. She was imprisoned in a secret location. Her capture sent shockwaves through the Jedi Order. Anakin, driven by a father's love and a Jedi's duty, immediately organized a search mission. With Luke by his side, they scoured the galaxy for any trace of Leia. Their search led them to a desolate world on the fringes of the Outer Rim. Guided by the Force and intelligence gathered by the Jedi, they eventually located the facility where Leia was being held. As Anakin and Luke infiltrated the stronghold, they encountered fierce resistance from Maul's forces. The father and son fought valiantly, their lightsabers blazing through the darkness. As Anakin and Luke finally found Leia in her cell, they were met with the chilling presence of Maul, waiting for them. It became clear that this was a trap. Maul's eyes gleamed with malevolence as he hissed,
"Take another step, and she dies."
I am the son of the Chosen One. We do not take orders from a Sith.
Much like his father had been in the past, Luke was overconfident in his power. Believing he could stop Maul before he could strike, Luke lunged at him. In a swift, horrifying motion, Maul sidestepped him and drove his crimson lightsaber through Leia's chest. As Anakin felt the indescribable pain surge through his soul, a demon awakened within him. The sight of his daughter falling, mortally wounded, filled him with rage unlike any he had ever known. Luke, filled with fury and grief, attacked Maul recklessly, but Maul anticipated this, countered Luke's assault effortlessly. Using the Force, Maul choked Luke, lifting him off the ground and leaving him unconscious but alive, a mere pawn in his cruel game. Anakin's eyes burned with a fierce light as he stepped towards Maul. Maul, sensing the raw, unbridled power radiating from Anakin, he knew he couldn't defeat him alone. He called in reinforcements, hoping the sheer numbers would overwhelm the Jedi, but Maul had underestimated Anakin's true strength. Anakin, his eyes blazing with fury and sorrow, reached out with the Force. With a swift, decisive motion, he grabbed every single one of Maul's men, snapping their necks simultaneously and dropping them lifeless to the ground. The room fell silent, the weight of Anakin's power palpable. Maul, realizing the dire situation, ignited his lightsaber and engaged Anakin. However, the duel was short-lived. With a single powerful swing, Anakin struck Maul down, ending the Sith's reign of terror in an instant. As Maul fell, Anakin rushed to Leia's side, his heart breaking at the sight of his wounded daughter. He cradled her gently, his anger subsiding as the reality of the situation set in. Luke, regaining consciousness, joined his father, the weight of their loss heavy in the air. Together, they mourned, knowing the battle was won, but at a great and painful cost. The aftermath of the battle was a somber time for the Skywalker family. Anakin, devastated by Leia's death, found it hard to console his remaining child. Luke, overwhelmed with guilt and anger, spiraled into self-blame. He replayed the moment in his mind repeatedly, convinced that if only he hadn't rushed Maul, his sister would still be alive. The burden of his guilt became unbearable. Luke felt the weight of his failure crushing his spirit, causing a rift between him and his parents. Unable to face them or himself, he left without notice, venturing into the galaxy alone. He sought solace and redemption, hoping to escape the shadows of his past. Anakin and Padme, heartbroken by Luke's disappearance, did everything in their power to find him. They sent out search parties, reached out to allies, and scoured the galaxy for any signs of their son. Despite their efforts, Luke remained elusive, driven by a need to distance himself from his family and his pain. During his travel, Luke encountered a mysterious and captivating woman. She was strong, confident, and seemed to understand his inner turmoil. Her name was Talon, and unbeknownst to Luke, she was Darth Talon, a Sith apprentice trained by Maul himself. Talon, sensing Luke's vulnerability, played a delicate game. She won his heart over time, offering him a semblance of peace and understanding that he desperately needed. She listened to his confessions, his regrets, and his dreams, slowly weaving a web of influence around him. Luke, longing for connection and understanding, found himself drawn to her, his defenses lowered by her seemingly genuine affection. Their bond deepened, and Luke fell in love with Talon. She became his sanctuary, someone who could ease his pain and offer him the comfort he had been searching for. Talon, in turn, showed him kindness and patience, allowing him to heal from his guilt and grief. She waited until their relationship was strong and their trust solid before introducing introducing him to any knowledge of the Force. As they spent more time together, Talon began to speak of power and control subtly. She introduced the idea that he could overcome his guilt and anger through strength and understanding. At first, Luke was hesitant, but Talon's influence was steady and persistent. She gradually revealed her knowledge of the Force, presenting it as a way for Luke to find balance and peace. Unaware of her true intentions, Luke was drawn to her teachings. He didn't realize he was being manipulated, his heart and mind gradually being swayed towards the dark path. Meanwhile, Anakin and Padme continued their search, unaware of the dangerous influence Talon had over their son. They hoped against hope that they would find Luke and bring him back before it was too late. The galaxy, still fragile from the recent conflicts, unknowingly stood on the precipice of another potential upheaval, with Luke's fate hanging in the balance.